she on the road, she riding it like Carnival. I done did the impossible. Go, 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 go. That's so good, she on the road, she riding it like Carnival. I done did the impossible.
3 incredible days here in the sea in Bali. I've just flown in. I can't wait to get back into Bali weather and the people, the community. What have been a couple top things you've taken away from this event? We've obviously had, William Brown come in and speak about his YouTube strategy. We've had Hamza come in, run by Bolton, and then all the incredible other guests and speakers and community here. We've been spoiled the last few days. I'd be really keen to hear. We haven't even had a chance to break down really, so just tell me what's been running through your mind.
Yeah, dude, it's been a while, a couple of days, man. It's just, with these events, I find that it's not even about, sitting in a room and, going through the presentations and things like that. It's more about the conversations that happen in between the sessions. And, we had things like breath work and the calisthenics in the caveman gym over there as well. So yeah, it's been amazing, dude. Some of the biggest takeaways for me were, a lot of it was based around messaging, content on the business side. So having core stories that you're telling in your marketing that resonates with the people who are the people you're trying to reach, those dream clients that resonate with the types of stories that are part of your personal story. So that was one of the biggest things. And then that being tied to also just sharing more of yourself in your content, really, really building towards how can I be the most authentic version of myself in my content. And that's been a key theme for everybody here, I think, because that's just something we're all striving for, because it's about really building that market of one. That you don't have competition, you don't have people you're competing with. It's more just about, you may be saying the same strategies, or you may be saying the same things as other people, but nobody can replicate you, how you show it up, how you show up, how you articulate things. And I think that's been one of the biggest keys, and it's a reoccurring theme from all these different masterminds. So yeah, that's been another thing. So a couple of things on the marketing side and content side, just moving towards authenticity. I think that's how you really separate yourself. But then more on the internal side as well, really stepping into more of a leadership role within yourself, and just being surrounded by other people who are leading other people. And sometimes it can be very daunting to step into a leadership role when it comes to your audience, your family, your friends. Let's go. And it's easy to feel that's a daunting task. It's a big thing to step into, but when you're surrounded by other people who are also doing those things, it makes it more normal. It's common conversation to talk about people who are leading, Hamza with millions of followers, and William with the last business he had and sold and exited. And then all the other conversations that you see, it's just this is just it becomes common conversation to talk about these different things. And I feel like I said at the beginning, those in between deep conversations that you have with people in between the sessions is where you start to raise your standards. You raise the bar for yourself, because you're not just looking at people online and what advice are you getting and going through courses and programs. That's great and everything, of course, but you're hanging around and you're energetically intertwining with people who are doing great things and have different missions, but they're all moving in a similar direction. And I think that's just been the best part, man. I still definitely need to integrate some of the things as well and reflect on some of this as well. Like, we're going to be chatting about this over the next couple of days, but dude, so many things. But I'd love to hear yours as well. Like, what were some of your biggest takeaways?
Yeah, bro, much the same as what you've just shared. Like, I think the overarching theme for me when it comes to these events that we do, like, all around the world, is that you simply cannot beat community, and it's accelerated when you're moving your location. So, like, I was talking to someone the other night over dinner here, and like, the best thing a human being can do for change isn't to go through a program. It's not even to have a mentor or a coach. The best thing someone can do is actually to move their location, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And it's actually by moving to a new place that the community, the environment that you've just moved into, actually starts to really change you, and you can't help but be changed by it. And you think, like, it's one thing to hear that and believe it. It's another thing to go, no, this actually happened, and this is how humans evolved. And, like, if you look into, like, deep parts of America, I think it was like Brazil. Let's go. DB doing the bombs over there. If you look into, like, deep parts of Brazil, they've got really high testosterone rates just naturally. And scientists have been stumped as to why for so long, until they started to just, like, look into, like, historically where people came from Brazil. Brazil was like the epicenter of people that came from all over the world and wanted freedom, wanted utility, wanted a new land to discover and new women maybe, or whatever it was. And the highest arching kind of reason these people were on the move all the time was, like, they just weren't satisfied, which is why they needed testosterone to get to that point. So if you look at, like, England, they took boats over to, like, America, and then they took over, like, the native Indians there, and then just went south through Mexico. And then along that trail, some people are stopping off and having families and having communities. But the ones that weren't satisfied, the ones that wanted more sovereignty, more freedom, more opportunity, kept going south until they hit about Brazil, the Amazon. And so that's why testosterone stays. Not to make this about androgens, but this is kind of why you'll see this in some cultures. And it's the same with, like, the islanders, where I'm from in New Zealand. Like, you've got Samoans and things that have really high testosterone rates. Even New Zealanders have it. And it's typically because they've had to fight over famine and war and all of this to be able to sail over to these distant lands. And I think it's the exact same thing for any entrepreneur that goes out there and changes their location. It's like you get, like, a small bit of what that means.
Yeah.
And it might not come in testosterone, but it comes in, like, the change in terms of your work, your performance. You think you're a certain way until you move halfway across the world.
Yeah,
So I know you've moved around a lot. Run us through some of the locations and, like, how has that eventually been for you? Obviously, this is something you've been into for a long time.
Dude, first of all, that's a fantastic point. Yeah, I love that. And I've definitely noticed that in my journey as well. Like, I've lived in places like Lisbon in Portugal, Spain for a long time as well, and then places like Vietnam, Bali, and then just traveled around and visited other cities in Europe, like the Czech Republic and, you know, Poland, Amsterdam, all places like that. I live in California for a bit too, and I've, like, what I find as well, just to add to that too, is, like, there's definitely different energies that you experience when you go to these different places as well, which is probably tied to that as well. Like, just certain energies that come from that ancestral path that has been ingrained into the communities that have been built there, and you can feel that when you go to these new places. So I find that, like, moving, like, your location, it's almost like a hack for, like, productivity if you do it in the right way. Like, I mean, if you're moving around every couple of days, I mean, it can be stressful, right? Or even a couple of weeks. But if you have certain seasons that you're in life or business where you're solving a specific problem, you have a certain thing that you want to get clarity on, you have a certain direction you're moving in, aligning the location that you live in with that goal is going to be a very key part to you actually achieving it in a shortest amount of time. You know what I mean? So understanding, like, the different energies that can be in different communities within the different places that you're visiting. And I know that may seem a little bit abstract, but just understanding, like, what types of people live there in a very simplistic way. What type of people live there? Like, what kind of networks are there? So for a great example of this is Dubai versus Bali. Like, you have similar networks of people, right? You would consider there's a big entrepreneurial group in Bali. There's also a big entrepreneurial group in Dubai, but the values would be very different, I'd imagine, right? A lot of similarities, a lot of crossovers, but different energy when it comes to, like, how to approach a business. You know what I mean? So that would be an example there as well. But there's so many things you could look at this. I mean, like spending some time in countries that are going to give you more of a relaxed energy when you're in like a very big growth phase is probably not exactly going to align with you and the energy that you're in, right? Depending on who you're around as well, because that can also be contradictory, because it actually may slow you down a little bit, which actually could be very beneficial. So it's also then comes back to like knowing yourself and how you operate. So everything, in my opinion, just comes back to knowing yourself, knowing who you are, knowing how you show up in the world and how you want to show up, and your energy, and like everything that comes down to how you operate on a day-to-day basis, how you structure your days, how you want to structure your days, and what is a dream life that you're moving towards. Understanding that, getting clear on that, and how your specific personality, your specific type of being, how that fits into your schedule, and then where you live as well. Aligning both of those things, I think, is just a cheat code, and I've done that as best as I possibly can for different seasons. So right now I'm living in Vietnam, a place called Da Nang, beautiful spot, but I think for the next season that I'm coming into towards the end of August, the next month, I think moving to Bali is going to be a good move for me, and coming here at least for a couple of months and just seeing like what that does, because I know that there's definitely a different vibe that I feel here compared to there, and I think this is going to be a good season to step into that as well. But I'd also look at some other places too. So yeah, how do you feel about it? Like, how do you feel about like moving around, and also like when you were helping Dan out as well, like you were doing a ton of traveling as well, like when you were working and managing the team and everything like that, like what was that like for you, and operating and running things while being on the go so much? Like what was that like in terms of like performance and health and everything as well?
Fucking great question. I wish I could sum it up. Honestly, it was a whirlwind day, like, because, and it, like, I love every bit of it, and it was so needed for me. I think there's two parts to it. There's the component of like taking away the travel, of like working closely with someone like Dan. I think everyone should really be like focusing on, you know, who's someone in my space or in my local, you know, community at least, that is kind of along the steps of where I want to be, and then just going and shadowing that person as hard as you can. And maybe sacrificing certain elements of lifestyle for that. In my case, I was very fortunate, like Dan's and me are very similar, which is probably why he wanted to work with me and I wanted to work with him, in the regard that we both love to travel. And so, to answer your question, like, it was both hard, but hard doesn't mean it was like not wanted. The whole time it was hard, of course, like away from family, away from friends as well. It's just me and Dan on the road. We're like bouncing between cities in America, and then, you know, 17-hour flight from Dubai. Like, you wouldn't imagine the kind of travel and stories we've had, but ultimately at the end of the day, I'm like, this is what's building those scars. You know, like they'll heal and then I'll come back stronger. And it's like, it's all in the moments of, you know, conversing with people in various different locations of many different events we've attended, sometimes as students, sometimes as mentors, you know. And honestly, like, when it comes to managing the team, it's a burden to try to do that, but it's also a burden to try to run a business and travel at the same time. So I think it's something you got to overcome, and then it comes back to like your performance, how well you look after yourself, your body, your inner game, and not letting the travel dictate how you live your life. You don't really want to be like running through life and then building like a business that changes as you change time zone. And like we've talked about this heaps, is like taking sales calls at odd hours and whatnot. And I think there's like obviously 3 levels to it, where you've got work from home workers, you've got time zone workers where it's like you can work anywhere in the country. Then you've got like truly autonomous workers that can work on any time zone, anywhere they want. And to me, that's the type of travel, the type of lifestyle that I try to build and encourage others to have. And I think that comes down to like in the business model, how you're working in it, and then leveraging other people. Dan was leveraging me, for instance. So I was taking a lot of the pressure off him having to make content while he's on the road. So you just kind of figure it out as you go. I don't think there's anyone writing the rule book on it. Travel is so great for so many reasons, but it definitely makes you tired. You definitely need to have like a high level of resilience. There's a great book I'm reading at the moment by Ross Idgley. He's a guy that swam around Great Britain. First man to ever do it, and took him like just under a year at ocean 24/7 for a whole year. Absolute beast. And his book on resilience talks about this, and he goes like, people want to have epic lifestyles, but their bodies just aren't resilient enough to be able to handle it. And so like when you're training or when you're thinking about your day-to-day health protocols, it's like not just so much so you can just like feel better, look better, it's like so you can actually travel further and deeper. So that you can have better conversations when you do show up jet lagged, like I was 2 days ago, coming from New Zealand where it was like -2 degrees in Queenstown, to like 30 plus degrees here. It's like I was able to keep and retain my attention span, listen to people, and because of that, the effect of that is that now I've got some really treasured, nurtured relationships with people that I can now leverage for business too. They can leverage me, they know me, they trust me. It's just accelerated.
I think I've told you this story before, but throughout school, like I would have so many of those conversations, like so many times where it was like, you're not doing this right, you're not, why aren't you paying more attention, this, I was just like one of those students that every teacher hated to have in their class. Like there was one teacher, I had a maths teacher, and I used to make like really loud like monkey noises at the back of the class anytime he turned around. So that I can like, obviously, it is what it is. It was funny at the time, but like there was one time where he like stood up and like told me to do something, and it was like one of those days where I was just like, there was a lot going on at home at the time as well. There was like a lot of stress or whatever, and I was just like, fuck school, basically, right? And he told me to like do something. He told me like, oh, go sit over there and stop talking to this, whatever. And I literally stood up and just went like 5 to 7 minutes straight of just like telling him off, and he retired the following day. He'd worked in the school for like 20 years. So like I'm not sure if I'm proud of that or not, but that was just like that. I remember that moment so distinctly because I spent the next like month or two, I think it was like 6 weeks in total, just in like a boardroom basically. So it was like a boardroom where you get detention, but it's like in school detention. So when everyone else has breaks, you are in the boardroom, and then whenever everyone else is finished, you go out. So you're out by yourself. So like literally isolation. But yeah, that just reminded me of that, man, because like that's been so reoccurring in my life as well. Just like rebelling against myself, like setting standards and structures for myself, and then rebelling against those as well. You know what I mean? So like just I think as men as well, one of our biggest cravings is just freedom, and like any grasp of freedom we can get, whether that's like through obviously starting a business or moving to a remote location or just doing things a different way. I think freedom is like in our soul, But the beautiful thing is the freedom comes from within, which we've talked about many times as well. So, yeah, it starts within,
Do you think that being rebellious is like a prerequisite for being an entrepreneur?
I think in a lot of ways it is, because without it, you don't have the drive or that kind of courage to go against what everybody else is telling you. And when you don't have that kind of, it's just a drive, man. It's like a rebellious drive to go against what people are telling you is the right thing to do. And when you don't feel that way, it's very easy just to be like, okay, well, let's just go this route, and this seems easy, and let's just fit in with these people. And I think that's a very comfortable place to be. And not that it's right or wrong. It's just like, if that doesn't align with you, and you're not, you don't feel that kind of rebellious drive against those paradigms that have been kind of implanted onto you by society, then I think it's unlikely that you're going to take the steps to create a business or go that direction, because you need some sort of spark to send you in that direction, right? Yeah. Otherwise it's like, well, what's the point? You know what I mean? Like, I think it all starts with like the desire to be different, or the desire to stand out, or just some sort of pain or something that brings something up inside of you where it's like, I don't want to live this way. So let's go into the unknown, which is a scary place to go. So I think it does come from rebellion a lot of the time. Yeah.
And like what else do you think is like a common trait or virtue that is associated with being rebellious that you feel like you need as an entrepreneur? Because I think many people want to be entrepreneurs. I don't know if you guys have seen that that Ronnie Coleman take, and he's like, everyone want to be a bodybuilder, but no one want to lift like no goddamn weight. Like that's this whole thing.
Everybody want to be a bodybuilder, But don't nobody want to lift no heavy ass weight.
It is like, I reckon everyone wants to be an entrepreneur, but no one really wants to like feel into these virtues you actually have to be and become in order to be a success in this arena. Like, it's hard. It's like just you versus the world or the economy. And you can come to as many of these events as possible, but in the end, you've got to go back to your home. Got to retire back to your isolation, your incubator. You've got to be a builder, creator, all of it. And the reward at its best, entrepreneurship is, yes, it's like sovereign, it's freedom, it's everything we want it to be. At its worst, it's isolation. And it's like you're removing yourself somewhat temporarily from society in order to be able to make society and fashion it with your own design. So what would you reckon are like some of the key virtues you need, or abilities maybe, in order to succeed with entrepreneurship?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. I can only speak from my own experience. That for me, it started with that rebellious drive that I didn't really know what to do with. So it resulted in me rebelling against like the school system, or just a way of doing things that everybody else was comfortable doing. But then, for me, it was like came from a place of pain a lot of the time, you know. And I think this is super common for entrepreneurial stories in general, where it's like just some sort of catalyst or some sort of moment in their life where they felt like they didn't want other people to experience what they were meant to experience, or what they were experiencing, or they didn't want other people to experience the thing that they have gone through. So they want to make a change in some way, shape or form. And then you get opened up to the world of like social media and the opportunities that come with that. So I can speak from my own experience that it did start from a place of pain. It did start from a place of, I want to get out of this life, this situation I'm in. And that was from a lot of the stuff that came from my family and how I was brought up and things like that. But then that's the initial spark. So from rebellion to like understanding that you didn't want your family or your legacy to experience the same things that you've experienced. And then the next step, at least for me, was like awareness. So like awareness of like spirituality and an awareness of, why are we here? Like, what am I here to do? Am I here to continue living this same monotonous life that everybody else seems to be very okay with? And when you have that kind of rebellious drive and you combine it with a newfound awareness of like, well, okay, there's other people doing these different things, and I'm seeing these people on social media, and it takes one person to move in a different direction for you to be able to see that as a possibility for yourself as well. Yeah. And when you see that combined with like developing your own awareness and understanding why you're here, asking those deeper questions, then it just, at least for me, has become like a sense of, this feels more aligned. This feels more like I should be doing this, because it's like closer to my heart. It's closer to my soul. It's closer to what I feel like I'm meant to be doing here. And
that's a good point.
That's what it comes back to, in my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah, because like what you mentioned there at the very end is like so key. I mean, how can you sustain the mission? We're electrical beings, and as you would say, like, the most energy we can summon comes from the heart, the soul, not so much the mind. And so like, as a man, we tend to crave these materialistic things, these possessions, the money, the fame, the Lambo, the Rolex, whatever it is. But that's only really like wanted here. It's not really wanted here, but this is the powerhouse, and this is really where we gain a lot of energy from. So I think that's why you got to attach a mission to the business. Otherwise, you're just like, what's the point of having a business outside of freedom? Yeah. Like most guys will say they just want it to be able to produce cash flow so they can get the possessions, so that one day they can fulfill what is already empty in here. So it's like, why not just start there instead?